Hello everyone. Since I'm not going to be able to be present, I wanted to go through a little bit more review and give you guys more chance to practice this grams to moles to moles to grams. So I created this handout for us to walk through. We're going to review the concepts and I'll show you all the different types of problems that we can have, and also I'll give you a chance to work on them, and then I'll be pausing the video, or you'll be pausing the video, and then we're going to see if you guys get the right answer. So it's going to be kind of like lecture, but I'm going to let you work on these. You've already had practice on the previous handout. If you've been having trouble with that, hopefully this will help to clarify a few things. So there's lots of different problems that we can have. And again, if you remember that things interact on a molecule per molecule, atom per atom, mole per mole basis. So when we're dealing with calculations, we often have to convert things to moles. So there's a lot of different possibilities. We can either convert from grams to moles, we can convert from moles to moles, and also moles to grams, or we can go from grams to moles, or moles to grams, or even all three steps, grams, moles, moles to grams. So to remind you, if you're converting from moles to moles, you really only need to use one step, and that's going to be using the molar ratio. And as indicated down here, you can use the molar ratio. This is found in the coefficients of the formula. So we'll get to this formula in just a few minutes. If you're converting from grams to moles, this is just a one step like we did in chapter 10. This is using the molar mass. Converting from moles to grams, this is just using a one step, which is the molar mass. However, if you're going from grams to moles, it's going to be two steps, or moles to grams will be using these two steps. If you're going from grams of reactant to grams of product, or grams of product to grams of reactant, you're going to have to use all three steps. So let's go over the simplest one, and that's going to be going from moles to moles. So what we see is that I have an equation for you, and we have calcium reacting with hydrochloric acid, and this will produce calcium chloride and hydrogen gas. So let's look at the coefficients. We have a 1 here, there's nothing in front of that. We have a 2 here, we have a 1 here, and then a 1 there. This is a balanced reaction. 1 calcium, 1 calcium, 2 hydrogens, 2 hydrogens, 2 chlorines, or 2 chlorides here. So this is a balanced reaction. So the question is, how many moles of hydrogen, is what we're trying to find here, will be produced if given 4.6 moles of hydrochloric acid. So we have, if we're looking at the ratio, it's going to be a 2-to-1 ratio. These are the numbers that we're going to be using. So you always start with the number that you've been given. So I've been given 4.6 moles of HCl. So I have 4.6 moles of HCl. I'm going to want to multiply this by, again, the molar ratio. Use the molar ratio, and that's going to be found in using these coefficients right here. So we'll get you started on the first one. I'll give you practice on the second one. So we're going to be canceling moles of HCl, and we want to calculate, the question's asking how many moles of H2. So we have moles of H2. What is the molar ratio? Look at the coefficients. What's the number in front of H2? It's a 1. What's it in front of the HCl? It is a 2. So in this, the moles of HCl cancel and the moles of HCl cancel. I'm left with moles of H2, and I simply take 4.6 divided by 2 on your calculator. 4.6 divided by 2. That gives me 2.3. So it gives me 2.3 what? 2.3 moles of H2. So what I'd like you to do is to try this. This is going to be saying how many moles of HCl are needed to produce 2.7 moles of CaCl2. So we have this amount of CaCl2. We want to know how many moles we needed of HCl. So it's going to be a very similar problem. So I'd like you to go ahead and pause right now and follow the same steps that we did for this and see if you can get the correct answer for this. Okay, hopefully you've done this problem and you've come back now, and we're going to simply multiply this by the molar ratio. So I am trying to find out how many moles of HCl there are, and I already know how many moles of CaCl2. So I'm going to cancel down in the bottom first my moles of CaCl2, and I'm going to be converting to moles of HCl. So that's what we're trying to find, how many moles of HCl. So let's take a look at the ratio of this. What are the coefficients? The coefficients for the HCl are 2. For the CaCl2, the coefficient is a 1. The moles of CaCl2 cancel. The moles of CaCl2 cancel. And now I'm going to be multiplying this and then dividing by this, but it's only dividing by 1, so it's really going to be multiplying the two factors on the top. So 2.7 times 2, this would give me 5.4 moles of HCl. So that's a one-step problem, going from moles of reactant to moles of product, or moles of product to moles of reactant. So the next one is going to be going grams to moles or moles to grams. So notice how I've also given you some atomic weights right here so that you can do some calculations, because in this we're going to have to be using the molar mass and the molar ratio as well. So let's go ahead and we're going to start. How many moles of CaCl2 will be produced given 30 grams of calcium? So this is what I'm starting with. So I'm going to be starting off with my 30.0 grams of calcium. Now I want to do this. I want to cancel my grams of calcium, and I'm going from calcium and grams of calcium to moles of this. So I'm going grams to moles to moles. So I first need to use the molar mass in this case. So I'm going to cancel my grams of calcium, and I'm going to be converting into moles of calcium. 1 mole of calcium weighs, I've actually given it to you. In this case, we don't have to add multiple things up because it's only one thing and it's calcium. So that's going to weigh 40.1 grams. So now I can cancel off my grams of calcium. So what I've done is I've converted my grams of calcium to now moles of calcium. But now what I want to do is I want to convert this into moles of my product, which is going to be calcium chloride. So I've used the molar mass for the first step. I now need to use the molar ratio. So here's the molar mass. We now need to use the molar ratio. So I want to cancel what I have on the top, which is moles of calcium. And I want to convert to moles. That's what I'm trying to find, is the moles. How many moles of CaCl2? CaCl2. So for this, I'm going to need to look at the molar ratio. The molar ratio, again, is found in the coefficients. So what is the number in front of CaCl2? It is a 1. What's the number found in front of the calcium? It's actually a 1. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio. The moles of calcium will cancel. The moles of calcium will cancel. Multiply everything on the top. 30 times 1 times 1 will just give me my 30. Everything on the bottom is going to be 40.1 times 1. So I'm just taking my top and dividing by the bottom. So I'll take my 30 divided by 40.1. This will give me 0.748. 0.748 what? 0.748 moles of calcium chloride, CaCl2. So for the next problem, you're going to calculate how many moles are needed to produce 17 grams of HCl. Okay? How many moles of, this actually should say how many moles of H2 would be produced we have 17 grams of HCl.